It was a quiet evening in the city. The golden lights of the skyscrapers reflected on the glass walls of a huge mansion. Inside that mansion lived a man named Adrian Cole, a billionaire known for his wealth, power, and sharp mind. People called him the man who could buy anything. But deep inside, Adrian knew one thing: money could buy comfort, not love. He had everything most people dream of: luxury cars, private jets, and a house so big it looked like a palace. But behind those walls he lived alone. His heart was full of doubt. Everyone around him seemed to love his money, not him. Every smile he saw looked fake, every thank you felt practiced. One night, as he stood near the window looking at the city lights, he whispered to himself, "I've given the world everything. But has anyone ever cared for me?" That night, he made a strange decision, a test. He wanted to find out who truly cared about him, not for his money, but for his heart. There were 3 women in his life who meant something to him in different ways. Clara, his girlfriend, beautiful, elegant, and always dressed in designer clothes. Mia, his business assistant, smart, confident, and always thinking about success. Ella, his maid, quiet, humble, and always kind to everyone in the house. Adrian decided to test all 3 of them in one simple way. He took out 3 black credit cards, each one limitless. No spending limit, no restriction. Then he smiled slightly and said to himself, "Money shows the truth. Let's see what their hearts really want." The next morning, he invited all 3 women to his mansion. As they entered the grand hall, they were greeted by marble floors, tall golden curtains, and a long table filled with breakfast dishes. The air was calm but strange, as if something important was about to happen. Adrian sat at the head of the table, silent, serious. The women looked at him curiously. "Clara," he said, "you've been with me for a long time. You say you love me, right?" Clara smiled sweetly. "Of course I do, Adrian." He nodded and turned to Mia. "Mia, you've worked with me for 5 years. You've been loyal, haven't you?" "Yes, sir," she said confidently. Finally, he looked at Ella, who was standing quietly near the corner. "Ella, you take care of my home every day. You've seen everything here, the good and the bad. Do you like working for me?" Ella smiled shyly. "Yes, sir. You've always been kind to me." Adrian leaned back in his chair, looked at all 3, and said, "Today, I want to do something different. I'll give each of you one of my credit cards. You can buy whatever you want. No rules, no limits. Spend freely." Clara's eyes widened. Mia's mouth opened in surprise. But Ella looked confused. "Sir, why me?" she asked softly. Adrian only smiled. "Because I trust you all, and I want to make you happy." They all thanked him in different ways. Clara hugged him, Mia shook his hand, and Ella bowed politely. Before they left, Adrian said something quietly. "Remember, what you choose will tell me more than what you say." As the 3 women walked out of the mansion with the cards in their hands, Adrian watched from the window. He didn't know what each would do, but deep inside, he was afraid. The narrator's voice fades in softly. Sometimes the biggest truths are hidden in the smallest choices. And soon, Adrian Cole would learn that love cannot be bought, but it can break a billionaire's heart. The camera slowly pans toward the city's skyline as suspenseful music plays in the background, a feeling that something big is about to happen. Asterisk the next morning. Adrian Cole woke up before sunrise. The air outside was cool, and the sound of birds filled the empty silence of his giant mansion. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and sat near the window again, the same window where he had made his strange decision. The night before, he looked at the city lights fading away and whispered, "Today, I'll finally see who truly knows me, and who only knows my money." For years, people had called Adrian lucky. But luck wasn't the reason behind his empire. He had built everything from nothing, from a small apartment and long nights of struggle. That's why betrayal hurt him more than anything else. Money didn't scare him. Fake love did. He had always believed that people show their real face when they are free to choose. And now, he had given that freedom in the shape of 3 credit cards. He picked up his phone and called his driver. "Jacob, follow them," he said calmly. each one of them. Record everything they buy. Don't interfere, just observe. Jacob, a loyal old man who had worked for Adrian for years, simply nodded. Understood, sir? Adrian trusted Jacob completely. The old driver had seen Adrian rise from dust to diamonds, and he understood his pain more than anyone else. After a few hours, the three women went their separate ways. Clara, the girlfriend, left first. She wore her favorite red dress, carried a designer handbag, and sat in the back seat of a black car. Her perfume filled the air with luxury. She looked out of the window, smiling, and whispered to herself, "A billionaire's card. Let's see how much love it can buy." Adrian watched the camera feed from his study room. His face showed no emotion, but inside, his heart was waiting to see if her love was real. Then came Mia, the assistant. She was different from Clara, smart, professional, and sharp-minded. When she received the card, her first thought wasn't fashion or parties. It was investment. She opened her laptop and started researching. Adrian smiled slightly when he saw that. "At least one of them knows the value of money," he said quietly. But he also knew even smart people can have greedy hearts. Lastly, there was Ella, the maid. She didn't even know what to do with the card. It looked strange in her hand, black, shiny, and heavy. She stood for a moment, staring at it, then carefully placed it in her small bag. She whispered softly, "I hope I don't disappoint him." Back in his study, Adrian walked around the room, restless. The giant clock ticked loudly, and every minute felt like an hour. He wanted to believe in love again, in kindness, honesty, and loyalty. But the world had taught him that money could make even the purest hearts turn cold. He poured another cup of coffee and looked at the screen, showing live footage from Jacob's car cameras. Each woman's journey was different. Each choice they made would soon uncover who they really were. The narrator's voice came in, low and calm. Adrian Cole had built walls of gold around himself. But what he wanted was a heart that couldn't be bought. Hours passed. Adrian's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jacob. "Sir, I've recorded everything. You won't believe what they did." Adrian's heart skipped a beat. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the message. He didn't reply. He only stared at the screen, his mind racing. He knew the truth was coming, and he wasn't ready for it. The clock struck 6 in the evening. The sky turned orange. The city outside glowed under the fading sun. Adrian walked to his balcony, looking down at the streets filled with people, laughing, shopping, living without fear. He smiled sadly and said, "They all want something money can buy, but I only want what it can't." The narrator closes the scene with a chilling line. Soon he would discover that some choices shine like gold, while others can break even a billionaire's heart. The next morning, the sky was bright and clear. The city woke up slowly, but for Clara, the day had already begun with excitement. She stood in front of her mirror, dressed in a silk gown, brushing her long brown hair and smiling at her reflection. The black credit card lay on her table, shining under the soft light. She picked it up gently, staring at it as if it were a magic key. "Unlimited," she whispered. "No limits at all." A smile curled across her lips. It wasn't the smile of love. It was the smile of power. She grabbed her phone and called her friend Sophie. "Guess what, babe?" she said, her tone playful. "Adrian just gave me his card, yes. The one with no limit. We're going shopping," Sophie screamed in surprise. "You're kidding." Clara laughed. "Oh, I never joke about money." Within an hour, Clara arrived at the Grand Plaza Mall, one of the most expensive malls in the country. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor as she walked in like a queen. Cameras flashed. People turned to look at her. From his mansion, Adrian watched everything through the live feed on his monitor. His expression stayed calm, but his eyes told another story. He hoped, deep inside, that she might do something thoughtful, maybe buy something meaningful, maybe surprise him with love. But Claire's first stop was not a bookstore, not a charity shop. It was the Diamond Lounge, a jewelry boutique famous for its luxury collection. "Show me your newest pieces," she told the salesman. He smiled, recognizing her. Of course, Miss Clara. We just received a new diamond set yesterday. Pure white stones, worth 50,000. Clara's eyes sparkled brighter than the diamonds. She tried them on, admiring herself in the mirror. I'll take this, she said without hesitation. And that bracelet too. She swiped Adrian's card once, twice, thrice, not even blinking as the numbers climbed. Back at the mansion, Adrian sighed deeply. He leaned back in his chair, muttering softly, "So this is what my love means to her." But Clara wasn't done yet. She moved from one luxury store to another. Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Gucci, Prada, shoes, handbags, makeup, dresses. Everything she saw, she bought. Her hands were full of shopping bags, her face full of pride. She called Sophie again. "Come meet me for lunch," she said. "Adrian's paying." At a fancy rooftop restaurant, Clara and her friends laughed loudly, surrounded by shopping bags. One of them asked jokingly, "You really think he won't be angry?" Clara waved her hand. "Oh, please. Adrian doesn't care. For him, money is like water. He'll never even notice." She didn't know that every laugh, every word, every swipe, Adrian was hearing it all. Jacob. The driver sent a small text to Adrian. "Sir, Miss Clara has spent over $120,000 in 5 hours. Adrian stared at the number, silent. He could afford it, of course, but it wasn't the money that hurt. It was the emptiness behind her choices. He whispered to himself, "When someone loves you, they think of your heart, not your wallet." As the evening approached, Clara finally returned home, tired but proud. She looked like she had just conquered the world. She entered the mansion, placed all her shopping bags on the couch, and said with a smile, "Adrian, darling, you have no idea how happy I am today." Adrian simply nodded. He didn't say much. His face showed calmness, but his heart felt heavy. He watched her walk away, still talking on her phone. Showing off her new diamond ring in the mirror, the narrator's voice entered softly. "Love built on money shines like gold, but breaks like glass." Adrian turned off the security feed, his hands trembling slightly. He looked again at the 2 other cards still in his drawer, one belonging to Mia, his assistant, and the other to Ella, his maid. He whispered under his breath, 2 more hearts to see, 2 more truths to face. As the camera zoomed out, the mansion lights flickered in the night. Leaving behind a quiet tension in the air, the narrator's final line echoed with mystery. He had seen greed in love, but he hadn't yet seen love in simplicity. The next day began quietly in Adrian Cole's office building. Tall glass walls, black marble floors, and the scent of expensive coffee floating in the air. Mia, Adrian's assistant, arrived early as usual. Her sharp eyes scanned her computer screen while her hands typed fast on the keyboard. She looked calm, but inside her heart was racing. The black credit card lay beside her laptop. It looked almost unreal, shiny, mysterious, powerful. She stared at it and whispered softly, "1 card. No limit. 1 chance." Unlike Clara, Mia wasn't the kind of woman who spent money without thinking. She was smart, careful, and hungry for success. She had grown up poor, studied hard, and worked her way up from nothing. She always told herself, "One day, I'll be rich like Mr. Cole." Now for the first time, she had the key to that dream in her own hand. She smiled and said quietly, "Let's see what smart choices can do." At his mansion, Adrian watched her through the camera feed connected to her office. He respected Mia's intelligence. She had always been loyal, or at least that's what he believed. He wanted to see what she would do when no one was watching. Mia opened her laptop and started searching online for investment stocks, startups, and crypto projects. She wasn't going to waste this chance on handbags or jewelry. She said to herself, "Clara will buy diamonds. I'll buy the future." Within an hour, she transferred large sums into different digital accounts. She bought company shares, high-value bonds, and even some rare digital art. Her moves were fast and confident, like someone who knew the world of money better than emotion. Adrian watched carefully, his eyes narrowing. He whispered, "She's clever. Maybe she understands what real value is. But as the hours passed, something changed. Mia leaned back in her chair, thinking she had invested millions, all from Adrian's card. But then she looked at her empty bank account on her own screen. Her voice grew quiet. All my life, I've worked for others. Maybe it's time I keep something for myself. She opened another account, one that wasn't connected to her office computer. She transferred a small portion of the money there under a fake name. Just a few $1,000s. Nothing huge, but enough to make her feel powerful. Her heart beat faster. She knew it was wrong, but she also felt she deserved it. After all, she whispered, I've given him years of my life. Back in the mansion, Adrian received a message on his phone from Jacob. Sir, Miss Mia has made several smart investments, but she also sent some money to a hidden account. Adrian froze. He didn't want to believe it. He trusted Mia more than anyone in his business circle. She had handled his secrets, his deals, his schedule, even his personal letters. He stood up, pacing across the room, his voice low and tired. Even the clever ones fall for greed. He closed the screen and walked to the balcony. The sky outside had turned gray. The wind moved the curtains as he whispered, maybe loyalty ends where temptation begins. Meanwhile, Mia was still in her office, looking at her reflection in the window. The city skyline shone behind her, tall buildings, flashing lights, endless roads. She smiled softly, convincing herself it wasn't wrong. I'm just taking what I've earned. But deep inside, she knew Adrian would find out. He always did. The narrator's voice entered, slow and haunting. Some people steal because they're greedy. Others steal because they're tired of being small. But no matter the reason, truth always finds its way home. That evening, Mia closed her laptop and placed the card back in her purse. Her hands shook a little as she whispered, I hope he never checks. At the same time, Adrian sat in silence, staring at the remaining card on his desk, the one belonging to Ella, his maid. He touched it gently and said, to have failed the test. Maybe the last one. Will show me something real. The lights dimmed, and the narrator's voice ended the scene. The smart chose greed. The rich chose luxury. But sometimes, the humble choose love. The rain started softly that morning, small drops tapping against the windows of the mansion. The sky was gray, and the world outside looked calm and cold. Inside, Ella stood in her small room at the back of the house, holding the black credit card in her hands. It felt heavy, not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. She looked at it for a long time. The golden letters of Adrian Cole shone faintly under the light. She whispered, why would someone like him trust someone like me? Ella was not used to big things. She had never owned a fancy dress, never been inside a luxury mall, never even dreamed of a card like that. She lived simply, waking up early, cleaning rooms, cooking meals, and taking care of the mansion that wasn't hers. But that day, she felt different. Adrian had given her something he never gave anyone: trust. She wanted to do something that made him proud. After finishing her morning work, she wore her old blue coat and took the bus into the city. The card was safe inside her small brown bag. The city looked busy and loud, cars honking, people rushing, shops glowing with lights. Ella didn't go into any fancy store. She just kept walking, thinking deeply. She stopped near a small flower stall. The woman selling flowers smiled and said, "Fresh roses, miss?" Ella smiled back and shook her head. "Not today." She kept walking until she reached a small hospital at the end of the street. Inside, an old nurse greeted her warmly. "Ella, you're here again?" "Yes," she replied softly. "How is Mrs. Turner?" Mrs. Turner was Ella's old neighbor from her village, a kind woman who had fallen sick months ago. Her hospital bills had been piling up. Ella had been trying to help by sending small amounts whenever she could. The nurse sighed. "She's stable, but she still needs surgery. It's expensive." Ella took a deep breath, opened her bag, and pulled out the card. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Please use this. Pay for everything." The nurse looked shocked. Are you sure, Ella? This looks like Ella interrupted gently. It doesn't matter whose name is on it. What matters is that she gets better. Tears welled up in the nurse's eyes. She nodded slowly and took the card. From his office at the mansion, Adrian was watching through the live camera feed. Jacob had followed Ella quietly, recording everything. As Adrian saw the nurse swipe the card for the hospital payment, his breath caught. He leaned closer to the screen, eyes wide. She used it. For someone else? He watched in silence as Ella left the hospital and walked down the street. She stopped at a bakery and bought a few boxes of bread and biscuits. Then she went to a small neighborhood where children were playing barefoot in the rain. She gave each of them food and warm blankets. Eat well, she said softly, and stay healthy. The children smiled and hugged her. Adrian's chest tightened. He felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. After a long day, Ella returned home with nothing in her hands. No shopping bags, no jewelry, no new clothes. When Adrian saw her entering the mansion, soaked in rain, he asked, Ella, did you buy something nice for yourself? She smiled shyly. No, sir. I bought something better. He tilted his head. Better? She nodded. I helped someone who needed it more than I did. Adrian's eyes softened. He didn't speak. He simply watched her walk away to her room. Her wet shoes leaving small footprints on the marble floor. The narrator's voice entered gently, warm but heavy with emotion. Some hearts shine brighter than gold. They don't take, they give. They don't show off, they heal. Adrian looked at the security footage again. The hospital, the children, the smiles. He sat down, covering his face with his hands. She bought kindness, he whispered, and I never expected that. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away the dust from the mansion's windows, and somewhere deep inside him, the coldness that had lived in his heart for years began to melt. The camera fades slowly as the music turns emotional. The narrator ends softly, while others bought beauty and power. She bought hope. Asterisk the next morning, the sky was quiet after a night of rain. The air felt new, clean, peaceful. Sunlight slipped through the tall windows of Adrian Cole's mansion, touching every corner like a soft reminder of truth. Adrian sat in his study, still dressed in the same suit he had worn the night before. His eyes looked tired, but his mind was clear now. On his desk were 3 things, 3 credit cards. One belonged to Clara, one to Mia, and one to Ella. Each card carried a story. Each one revealed a heart. He picked them up slowly, one by one, feeling their weight. Money, he whispered. The mirror of the soul. It was time to face them. He sent messages to all 3 women, asking them to come to his mansion by noon. None of them knew what was about to happen. The confrontation, the clock struck 12. Clara arrived first, shining in new clothes, diamonds around her neck. Adrian, she said cheerfully, walking in with a bright smile. I hope you like the things I bought. Mia arrived next, professional, carrying her laptop bag. She smiled politely. Good afternoon, sir. Ella came last. She wore her simple blue dress, hair tied neatly, eyes humble as always. She stood quietly near the door. Adrian looked at all 3 of them. The room felt heavy, silent, but powerful. He took a deep breath. I gave each of you a card, he said slowly. I told you to buy whatever you wanted. Today I want to talk about what you chose. Clara laughed lightly. Oh, darling, it was just fun. You said no limits, remember? Mia crossed her arms, looking confident. I invested smartly, sir. You'll be proud when you see the returns. Ella said nothing. She just looked down at her hands, waiting. The truth unfolds? Adrian stood up and pressed a button on his desk. The large screen behind him lit up, showing videos from the cameras Jacob had used. First came Clara's clips, the jewelry store, the designer shops, the expensive lunches. Clara's smile slowly faded as the video played. You spent $120,000, Adrian said calmly. All on yourself. Clara tried to laugh, but her voice trembled. It was your gift, I thought, he interrupted gently. You thought wrong. Next, the screen showed Mia's office, her investments, her transfers, and finally, the hidden account she created. Mia froze. "I was only trying to prove I'm smart with money," she said quickly. "That small amount. It was nothing." Adrian's voice stayed quiet but sharp. "A small lie grows into a big one, Mia. I trusted you." Finally, the last video began. Ella at the hospital. Ella buying food for the children. Ella giving blankets to strangers in the rain. The room went completely silent. Clara's eyes widened. Mia looked down. Adrian's own eyes turned soft and wet. He walked closer to Ella and said quietly, "You didn't buy a single thing for yourself." "Why?" Ella hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because, sir, you already gave me enough. I have a roof, food, and kindness here. Others have nothing. I only wanted to share your blessing with them." Her words hung in the air like gentle rain. Adrian blinked back tears. He had spent his whole life surrounded by people who wanted his wealth, and now, finally, someone had shown him love without wanting anything in return. The heartbreak and the lesson Adrian turned toward the window, taking a deep breath. His voice broke slightly. "I gave money to see who loved me, but what I found broke my heart." He looked at Clara and Mia. "You both taught me what love without truth looks like. But Ella, you reminded me that real love doesn't ask, it gives." Clara stood up, embarrassed, and left without a word. Mia followed quietly, her head down. Adrian turned back to Ella. He handed her an envelope and said, "Inside, this is a new home deed, in your name. Not payment, but gratitude. You showed me what my billions could never buy. Peace." Ella shook her head. "Sir, I can't accept this." He smiled faintly. "Then accept it as a thank you from a man who finally learned what love means." As Ella left the room, Adrian stood alone, staring at the empty hallway. The narrator's voice entered softly. He tested hearts with gold, but gold failed the test. In the end, it was kindness, quiet and unseen, that won. Adrian looked at the city outside and whispered one last line. "Money can build walls, but love breaks them." The music swelled as the camera pulled back from the mansion, sunlight filling every window, and thus ended the story of the billionaire whose heart was broken, not by betrayal, but by the beauty of a humble maid's soul.